my name's Mark Melville and I'm a freelance composer and sound designer, and I work in theatre, film and dance. Well, I approach music and sound because I studied in recording techniques. I always think of it as just as sound, never as this is classical, this is rock, this is jazz. I always just think of it as tones and sounds. So when I think about fusion, I just think about the best mix of tones and sounds to reach a desired effect. So I never think in terms of mixing genres. I just think of in terms of what are the frequencies coming out of the speakers am I trying to play with and accent.
Okay. Good.
And sometimes that involves using maybe sometimes I'll have a piece of music and all of a sudden you'll stick Brazilian drums on it, and it just feels like it adds an exciting layer of tone and sound into the thing. So I never, using different styles is never kind of a barrier thing. I just think of it as a giant melting pot with just to kind of play with. So because I work a lot with a laptop and in terms of recorded sound, I can take in a Brazilian or a Portuguese singing phrase, bring that into my computer and then melt it into another sound completely, using kind of processing effects and live effects, or in turn learn that phrase on a guitar and play it back on guitar. So
you change it.
I just think of it as just anything is just raw material like a skeleton to hang things on. Sometimes by doing that you'll discover something else, and sometimes you'll just keep it as it was, that phrase, or sometimes a drummer will hear that phrase and respond with a drum beat that kind of just I just think of those kind of materials as skeletons to hang things on. Well, I've been playing music for about 20 years or something. So on that journey, I've just picked up lots of bits. I've studied jazz and I've played with jazz musicians. I've studied folk and I've played with folk musicians. And sometimes when you work on project to project basis, that forces you to learn new things. I did a project a couple of years ago where I had to learn about body percussion and vocal percussion, so that takes you down just a research route into kind of Balinese music and Brazilian music and African music, and just learn about the principles of those things is really exciting, because you start to just realise the crossover in things, and you hear, it's like we were saying before, there's only kind of 12 notes, and it's interesting how other people have just took those notes and used a different kind of feel behind them. And same thing with rhythms. You can write out African rhythms that make sense on a page, but they're just using them in a different way and in a different understanding. When I think about bad fusion, I just think of things that just they feel like it's fusion for fusion's sake. So sometimes when I hear some prog rock stuff that is obviously trying to fuse jazz with hip hop and Latin music, and it ends up just sounding like a clinical exercise. Sometimes it lacks a bit of heart to me. So, some fusion's sake. I don't know. I guess it's all about the people making it, I guess, because I went to see a live gig the other day that was a rockabilly singer who worked with a kind of hip hop DJ, and you wouldn't think those styles really sat that well, but it worked brilliantly well, and it was just those artists just clearly really understood each other and knew how to respond to each other. Where with that prog rock example, it was much more clinical, and it felt like that was the jazz, that was the Latin, and that was the hip hop that we're trying to melt together. It wasn't kind of sitting well together. So. Well, that's the other good thing about recorded music, is that because there's so much recorded music out there in terms of history, it's always exciting when you find an old 50s record that's just got a brilliant drum break at the start, or a brilliant gospel record that's just got a beautiful kind of a cappella bit at the start, and you can, I was just because I got interested in hip hop early on as well, and about how, that is kind of just taking those elements and just playing with them. So, that's, with recorded stuff, you can just pull things from everywhere, and anything can become anything. It's just about open up yourself to different sources and things, and that's what's really exciting. You know, sometimes if you use like I don't know, Latin drum beats on kind of classical stuff, it just adds another texture and a different, particularly when we work with live musicians, it adds another idea to people to respond to, and it can kind of lead you down different corridors. So I think it's always good to mix it up. And when I was studying at music college, some of the most exciting bits were where you ended up in a room with a tabla player, a violin player, an opera singer, and a jazz drummer, you know, and just seeing how those things could bump up against each other. You know, that's just really exciting because everybody's kind of discovering something new. Kind of the corridors of their experience are sort of meeting together, and that's just inventive. You know, it just makes it out in a new place. But yeah, I guess it's very, because what I do is very much responding to a dramatic brief, because I always write. You know, I'm always writing for plays or films or I'm writing kind of accompaniment and supportive music to other things, so it's always kind of determined by that. But there's always room for exploration around that. You know, like I did a play once about a pigeon fancier who kind of took on this rebel boy who was bad at school and was really into hip hop and things, and like a creative music fusion that I'd tried with that was getting a classical clarinetist. I sat and recorded a pigeon coop for like 2 hours, and then wrote out notation of what the pigeons were cooing and things, and then got this classical clarinetist to play those back and recorded it up a few layers, and then tried mixing that with kind of basketball sounds of this young guy's hip hop kind of life, and mixing all that together. You know, so sometimes the kind of the dramatic brief can open itself to fusion and things. I did one play about a girl who was obsessed with writing letters on a typewriter, you know, and she met this guy who was a mute, so I just took that sound of a typewriter and recorded lots of samples of typewriter keys and put that as part of the music score. So when they came together, you kind of got this mesh of music underscore, but mixed with kind of typewriter sounds that would have never have happened had it not been for that. For that play. So I'm always really excited about what stories can offer or suggest fusion wise. You know, that's really, really interesting.